We're never going to find it there. We're never, never, never going to find it in the food. You could eat all the food. I mean, when I was binging and stuff, I could go into a buffet or restaurant and and I would eat all the food there. You know what I mean? So, have a story like the guy goes to a buffet and the amount of food you put on a plate sort of determines how many problems you have. So one guy's walking in with a big plate of food and somebody says, "Hey, that guy's got a lot of problems." In other words, we try to bury our problems through getting more success, more money. When we start to realize, and we have this anyway, let me get to the third. So this way, I always says, I want people who are there who haven't had it yet, a spiritual awakening. You don't have to have go to 1,000 meetings. You don't have to have 100 sponsees. You can have that transformation now. The transformation is just understanding the principle that all our thinking and all these material things, that the happiness comes from within. So you wake up depressed or upset, it's in here. It's not about you're thinking about all of these things outside yourself. It doesn't matter, because it says here, we began to lose fear of today, tomorrow, and the hereafter. This is really true. Look, how many of you are just hearing this? It goes in one ear and out the other. I did that for quite a few years, but believe me, it says we were reborn. We were like a baby. Children, when they play, they're in the present. It's only when we made a decision to use our intellect to control life. God gave us this great treasure, an intellect, to think on a higher level. But if you relate us to a puppy dog wakes up every day. They say it's the best day of their lives. Children too, when they wake up. But no, we misuse the intellect. We got to think things out, figure things out. We got to make it all about us. I'm sure the lower levels are thinking like in a puppy dog or a child. It's not about them. It's about life. We're so finite. We walk out of the house, our head is down. We're afraid to see the neighbors. We're in fear. What are they going to do at work? With the food, I'm on this diet. We could surrender. And when we surrender the whole world, and when we're quiet, the whole world surrenders to us. It just all opens up. You go out, I used to drive my car, have resentment and anger towards somebody. And I would drive, I missed the beauty in the nature. I was miserable, depressed. And when I expectations, people act a certain way, it's all nonsense. So it says, the first sentence says, if you just get this first sentence, then that's the spiritual transformation. God, I offer myself to thee. So say to yourself, what does that mean? It means, I always say, this guy, I was going through the book with him and sponsee, and I would always ask him, well, what does that mean? And he would always says, it means what it says it means. So he was really right, because there's no other interpretation we had to say on this. It says, God, I offer myself to thee. Either you're going to do that or not. This has to do with the third step, right? Third step. Second step said we were insane. Third step, which we're talking about, the insanity of our lives. Third step said. So again, the transformation will come here right now if you understand this and incorporate it. So if you're going to offer humility, that's 6 and 7, step 6 and 7. Have the willingness to have humility. So as soon as you could say right here, right now, all of the problems you have right now, everything in your life that you're worried about, restless, irritable, discontent, depression, anxiety, will go away when you offer yourself to thee. Out of the self, it's really, look, it's a source within us. It's called the soul. We were meant to be happy, joyous, and free. And the way we're going to notice is that when we get out of the self, there's the human side and the ego. It just does. If you say this to yourself right now and get out of the self, then all of a sudden you'll think you want to go for that job interview you were thinking of. You'll go talk to that person. They'll be argumentative, and it won't matter to you because it's not about me. When you're in an argument, it's all about the self and the ego. Selfishness, self-centeredness, that was our problem. Because the next phrase, here, listen to this. So if you should get the whole spiritual awakening through that first phrase. But if you feel you need some extracurricular stuff, here we go. It says here, to build with me and do with me as I will. Well, the first phrase said it, but here they're trying to expand on it to give you a better explanation that this higher consciousness, which we were created in God's image. God is in us all the time. It's in everything and everyone, right? Pretty much. It's a universal vibrations. They talk about certain philosophies, Eastern, the Tao, or whatever, all kinds of philosophies. But that universal energy is in everything around us. It's all there. We are created by this image, and I always say to people, the way we know it's true is because it works in our lives. Okay. And it just works. Getting out of self and this higher consciousness. Hey, let's face it though. And it says in We Agnostics, this life is so miraculous and everything around us. We just didn't come from nothing and go to nothing, to get a quote from there. There had to be some purpose around it. There had to be some kind of intelligence or higher consciousness And, and the more faith you have, I said, we have prayer, meditation, being the present is nice, but we have faith, a little bit of faith, as it says here. If you believe that there's a God or a higher consciousness that we create in that image, and you just let yourself go. And even if you don't want to, you don't have a choice. Either you can be miserable and discontent, you can be into food addiction, or you let it go. So we're at the jumping off point. Most of the people here get these depressions, anxiety, and fearfulness. Okay. So it says that I may better do thy will. Again, it goes back to that. Thy will take away my difficulties. So here in my life, I try to constantly take away my difficulties. And here it says to take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those I would help of thy power. Okay. So again, thy power. When I say, when we go to work or we're in a situation, a family, it's God's power. It's no longer us and our ego. So if somebody's acting like the sick man prayer says, if somebody's spiritually sick, they're talking about physically sick there, we can only sit there and have compassion and love for them. And, at times I do get into the self, but then, I used to carry around, like I said, I'd be driving a resentment for years. Now somebody could do something. A lot of times I don't even get that. But if I do get angry, resentment, or fearful, I have a solution. But when I go to meetings and I speak to call 10 people up and tell them, look, so-and-so did this, that, we'll call what's in the problem. And what's the problem with being in the problem? Is because the problem really isn't real. It's something in our mind that we created. Even if somebody did something, what is the problem? Let them act and do what they want. And my life is my higher power is God. As soon as we resent somebody, as soon as we're into the food, we're making it our higher power. So if you're sitting there eating a big plate of food with all the sauces that restaurants and supermarkets, put in there to get us addicted, you're in the problem. The solution is that transformation towards it, seeing it, say, do I want all this goopy food? Do I want this goopy drink? And, I want natural things. I had the apple, the banana, the fruit, things from the ground, grains, whatever else. One ingredient, I say, is one ingredient. That's the way that's the transformation. And then it says here, thy love, thy way of life may do thy will always. So how do we know when we're doing our will? We're miserable, discontent, irritable. Again, self will run riot. We're using this intellect to make ourselves miserable. Right? Because, hey, you can't blame us. We were taught when we were children, when we were brought up, we were taught that. We were taught that if we only could do well, better grades at school, better at sports, be with the in crowd at school, right? Now, I mean, when you have the spiritual awakening, you could walk into a situation at work or in a room or a meeting, and everybody there could hate you, don't like the way you dress. I don't care. The happiness isn't going to come from that, and then somebody can walk into the room and they're very popular. 99%, 99 people, 100 people like them there, but they'll be worried about the one person who doesn't. And they're very miserable because people are controlling them. We don't want to be controlled by whether they're going to fail us every time, whether people like me, they don't like me, or whether, thinking of the past and the resentments, the anger, the sentimental feelings. A lot of songs on the radio, they talk about these loves and, in a lot of philosophies and religions, they really say stay away from the music, right? Unless it's spiritual type music. There's a reason for that. They don't want their mind, even when you go see a movie, being dragged around. So I say, go out and enjoy these things, every material things in the world, but, be part of the world, but not be of the world. In other words, not make it, this is what life's all about. But you can enjoy it. But when it comes down to it, the real, if you want to be blissful, people say, oh, I'm depressed. I have depressive chemicals in my brain. Possibly so. But I don't know if the chemicals say these are depression or not depression. What the brain is, what it is that you can use that same energy towards being fearful all day to being blissful and happy. It's a transformation. It's talking about here being reborn. If you want to get out of that food addiction, be reborn in thinking. Okay, but you can't be reborn. The diets, when they give you little morsels of food, but they still have all that junk in them, you're not respecting the body. And when you feel that the solution is more money or more food, the transformation comes. So it says here, we thought well before taking this step, making sure we were ready, that we could at last. Again, it's saying the same thing. This book, I tell you, in this first 167 pages, I could take one phrase and one line and it'll say the whole thing. I mean, again, this prayer Each sentence says it again and again and again and again, the same thing. The 12 steps talks about it. The spiritual awakening will come if right here, right now, you would, that we could at last abandon ourselves utterly to him. Do you know what that means? I mean, how many times you read this? Have you abandoned yourself? It says abandon the ego. It's all about the selfishness, self-centeredness on page 62. We are the authors of our own problems. If I have a problem today, I'm the problem. Get it? I'm the problem. It comes from my thinking. Again, 10 other people who I would call about the problems would say to themselves, well, what is this guy worried about? It's not a big deal. Okay. So we made a decision when we were younger, some people more than others, but people who are really depressed and anxious made a decision that it all depended on the relationship to people, places, and things. Again, that's the material. That's called things of the flesh, right? The 7 deadly sins. That has to do, we're going to be rocketed on page 25 and 26. It talks about being rocketed into that 4th dimension. Believe me, it's true. When it says that on page 25, you want to read, and for some reason they call it on page 25, or is it 25, there is a solution. Again, I always say, why do you think they call this the problem? Believe me, this program is true. It works if you really want to work the program. And it says in the 2nd paragraph, the great fact is just this: nothing less that we have had deep and effective spiritual experiences have revolutionized. So we want that reborn thinking of revolutionizing our whole lives towards our fellows, towards God's universe, towards our fellows, having to love, patience, and tolerance for all of them. And just love and patience. You know what? I just realized, we're getting with time, but anyway, it says here, the central fact of our lives today on page 25 is the absolute certainty that a creator has entered into our hearts and lives in a way that is indeed miraculous. He has accomplished those things for us, which we could never do for ourselves. And again, there is no such step as trying to figure it out. It's all about releasing, surrendering. You could do it right here, right now. I'm telling you, and start that surrender. Don't try to figure it out. Let go, let God, and get out of the self, the ego. The ego is the cause of all problems. We don't need that. That's a lower level thinking. We need to be, though, happy, joyous, and free. And spiritual food is called spiritual food.